Hey everyone. So the other day, Eslam Hefnawi wrote this post about using SendGrid with Serverless Cloud. And about a week before that, we also launched Serverless Cloud Events, which is a pretty cool feature that lets you send events and then listen for them and process them asynchronously. But it also has a very cool feature here where you can actually delay the events. So this post by Eslam shows you how to set up a Serverless Cloud app, how to set up your SendGrid account, and a couple of things here with parameters and so forth. But I thought it'd be cool if we were to just build a quick app that uses Serverless Cloud Events and SendGrid to build sort of a onboarding email sequence system and see how easy that is to do with Serverless Cloud. So I have a SendGrid account that I've already set up. So we don't have to do that, and I've already verified my sender and all that kind of stuff. But before we get into SendGrid, let's go ahead and set up a Serverless Cloud app and get going with that. So I'm going to jump over here into VS Code with my terminal open. I'm just in an empty directory here for mail demo. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in npm init cloud. Now, as long as you have npm installed and node, then you don't have to install anything. You just type this in an empty directory, you hit enter, and this is going to go ahead and generate a Serverless Cloud application in this directory for you. So I'm already signed into Serverless Cloud. If not, you would have to sign in. But again, you can use GitHub or Google or create your own username and password. So I'm going to select this template JavaScript API, just a quick starter template. I'm going to name it mail demo. And this is going to generate a couple of files, install some dependencies over here, and you'll see there's not a lot of files here. It's very, very simple. And then it's going to go ahead and connect to my mail demo app and give me this URL. So if I click on this URL here, this will go ahead and open up on my browser. This is actually loading this live URL that I have, and this is my own personal developer sandbox. So this is isolated from anybody else on my team using this app or trying to develop against this app. So this is my own workspace, and I can make changes, so I don't have to worry about any sort of resource contention with any of my other teammates. So let's look how this actually works. I'm going to click on index.js. This is it. This is the only file here. You've got your node modules and a README file and your package.json, but essentially it's just index.js. And you'll notice here that we're importing API from @serverless/cloud, which is the serverless developer kit or our SDK, and then we're creating an API route. So api.get/async request recres should be very familiar to anybody who's ever used Express or Connect or any of those frameworks, those web frameworks. And we just do res.send, sending hello serverless cloud back. If we wanted to make a change here and say hi serverless cloud, as soon as I save this, if we look down the bottom here, this will go ahead and update. Notice that it took about a second to update this code, and then over here in my browser, if I refresh, this is updated and deployed immediately. So this is the way Serverless Cloud works. You code locally. As you code, it automatically saves and redeploys for you in your sandbox, and you can see what's happening over in your actual application instantaneously. So very, very cool stuff. All right, so we're not going to get into too many other bits of that. We're just going to go ahead and build this app. So the first thing that we need to do if we are using SendGrid over here is we do need to find the developer library that we're going to go ahead and use. So I'm going to open another window here, go back to SendGrid, go to developers, and let's go over here to the node library. And if we scroll down here, it's going to say if you just want to send mail, use @SendGrid/mail. That's all we want. Okay, so let's jump over here and let's do install @SendGrid. I can spell /mail. Now this is just like installing npm. We're just in our shell right here, but you could do npm I @SendGrid/mail. It'll do the same thing. This is just gonna make it easier so you don't have to exit out of the shell here. So that went ahead and installed the SendGrid mail package. So we have that. And now let's go ahead and jump into the docs here just so that we can figure out how to use this. So if we go here and click on the quick start, so we'll click onto this, and then we'll look at how to send an API mail. So this says we just have to require it, use this set API key and pass in our API key, and then we can just do sgmail.send. So this is using promises, and this is using CommonJS, but we're actually running here in ES6. So what we're going to do, this is a more modern sort of environment, running Node 16. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to import instead. Now we can name this anything we want because it's just a default export. So we're going to import it as mail, and we're going to import that from @SendGrid/mail. Okay, so now we've done the first part here. We have mail, and then we have to do this mail.set API key. Just like that. All right, now I'll save this. Now, the problem is that we don't have an API key yet, so we're going to go ahead and create that. So I'm going to jump back over into SendGrid. I'm going to go down into Settings, and I'm going to click API Keys, and I'm going to create an API key. So the first thing we're going to do is name it, and we're just going to call this Send Mail, and then it asks us what type of permissions we want to give it. So I'm going to give this restricted access, and I'm just going to give it mail send capability. Now the reason for this is we only need to send mail. We don't need to do any of these other things. So principle of least privilege here, we want to try to keep this as safe as possible. All right, so creating in Vue, we have this security key here, but we have to get this security key into our application, and we want to make sure we do that securely. So what we're going to do is go over here, and you'll see, by the way, that it says that the API key does not start with SG because we're sending in nothing. So over in our terminal, we can just type in open, and that's going to go ahead and open our dashboard for us. So now we're in our dashboard. We see this Jeremy demo personal. This is my personal developer instance. There's just one instance in this mail demo. So every developer, as they're logged in, any app they work on, they'll get their own personal instance. It'll be named after whatever their username is. This is just my username for this demo account. So what we're going to do is click on parameters, and you'll see that there's no parameters yet for this mail demo. I'm going to hit add new parameter, and I'm going to name this SendGrid_API_key. Now we'll jump back over to SendGrid. I'll click on this and copy it, jump back into my parameters, and paste this in and click save. So this will go ahead and save that parameter into this app. Now the way that this works is I'm saving this at the app level, and this key will go ahead and populate down into all of my instances, all the different versions of my app. So if I go into Jeremy Demo here and I click on parameters, we'll see that the SendGrid API key is here, it's inherited, and I can override it if I want to. So this is great for any of your developers that are using this, or maybe a staging environment or previews of this. They'll all use this default key, and then if I want to override it in production, for example, then just in that instance, I can override it. So anyways, we now have our key in our parameters. So we're going to go back over here to our app, and we're going to import another interface called params from our Serverless Cloud SDK. And now with this, we can simply type in params.sendGrid_API_key and save this. And now that parameter has been injected into our application. Now this is automatic. You don't have to await anything. You don't have to do anything special. And even if you update this key, it'll go ahead and push it out to all of your live instances, so you never have to worry about redeploying or any of that sort of stuff. So a very cool feature. I'm going to clear that out, and now we can actually go and try to send a message. So back to this quick start here, it's going to say we can use this .send method. So what we'll do here is we will await. So we're not going to use promises. We'll use await because, again, modern JavaScript. We'll do await, and we called it mail, not sgmail, mail.send. And we're going to send in some parameters there, or the message that we want to actually send. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this, and we are going to go ahead and just put some JSON in here, and we'll say message sent. Like that. Okay, so now we have to go ahead and enter some parameters in, or enter in the message we want to send. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and paste this in so we have the right structure. And the to message will be jeremy@serverless.com. And the from message, because I've already authorized jeremy@jeremydaily.com, and we don't need these comments anymore. And sending with SendGrid is fun. We're going to go ahead sending with serverless cloud is fun. And then we can just say test, and this is serverless cloud. Yay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and save that. So this looks pretty good. We're already updated here. Now, if we want to go ahead and test this, let's just jump back over into this application here. And I'll go ahead and hit refresh in our browser. It says the message was sent. Let's jump into Gmail here and see what we got. So here we go. Sending with Serverless Cloud is fun. Click on this. Serverless Cloud, yay. Perfect. All right, so that worked fine. All right, but what we want to do is we want to build an email sequence here. So we don't want to have to code all this HTML here. We certainly could do that if we wanted to, but SendGrid actually has a really cool feature called dynamic templates. So let's use those, and we'll create a couple of emails that we will send as part of the sequence. So we'll create a dynamic template. We'll call it welcome email. Go ahead and hit create. Once we do that, we have to add a version. We'll select the blank template, use the design editor, and go over here and name this welcome email. We'll just say number 1. And subject will be welcome to Serverless Cloud. And the pre-header, you've signed up for Serverless Cloud. Like that. Okay, so then over here, we can go ahead to the build section and let's drag an image. I already have this one uploaded here, just an image of Serverless Cloud. I'm going to click on this and we'll actually add a link here. This is just for fun to cloud.serverless.com. Spell it right, .com. Looks good. And then we'll take some text. We'll drag some text over here and we will do hello. And SendGrid supports dynamic template variables with this handlebar syntax. So we're just going to go ahead here and type in first name. And then we'll do thank you for signing up for Serverless Cloud. And then we can say check out the docs. All right, so now we need a link to the docs. So actually in the Serverless Cloud terminal here in the shell, if you just type in docs, then this will go ahead and actually open up a link to the docs. So we're going to copy this and go back to SendGrid here, and then we'll paste that in, and we're going to make this a link, which you think it would do automatically, but it doesn't, but that's fine. Okay, so now we have this, and we're going to click Save. All right, and we'll go over here and we can look at preview. And notice that the hello, the first name is blank there, so we can click show test data, and we can actually enter in that test data here, and we'll just say test name, so we know that that's a test. Click that there, and you'll see that that fills in. So we'll go ahead and hit save, and this test data will save for us. So back to our preview, filled in, looks good. Okay. Wonderful. So we go back to design, we can test this email, and we're going to go ahead and send this to jeremy@serverless.com. Hit send test, and then it says it was sent. Jump over here, and then boom, welcome to Serverless Cloud. Hello, test name. Thank you for signing up for Serverless Cloud. Check out the docs. Okay, perfect. So that is working. And now what we want to do is we actually want to take this template though, and we want to send it from our application. So if we jump back over into our application, we can get rid of all of this here, and all we have to send in is the template_ID, which we will send in as this template ID here. And copy that, paste that into our application, and then we have to send in the dynamic _template, template_data like that, and we'll just send in this object with first name, and I will use Jeremy here and go ahead and save this. All right, so now we have this using this dynamic template. So we can jump over to our app. We'll refresh this. This will load, message was sent, and we should be able to go into our inbox and see another message, and this time it's filled out with hello Jeremy and populating that correctly. Okay, so let's delete that, and now we have this working. So what we're going to do is, this is just sending a mail message the second that we log in, or the second that this API is hit. Now clearly this is going to be a problem if for some reason, let's say SendGrid is down. So if we can't send the message right away, that's not great. So one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to actually delay the sending of this message. We're going to do it by breaking out a new function, and we're just going to say const send mail. This is just going to be a new function that we create. We want this to be asynchronous because it's going to call an API. It's going to call this mail.send, and we're just going to call this, we can just pass it in as data if we want to, and then we've created this function. So now I'm going to take this await send here, and I'm going to actually get rid of it there, and I'm going to move it down to this section here. I'm going to start filling in some dynamic data here. So I'm going to change this to data.email, and I'm going to leave the template ID for now. And then for the dynamic data, I'm actually just going to pass in whatever comes in as data. So again, you could do this differently, but this way it'll just take whatever I pass in as data and it will send it as the dynamic template data, and then I'll have access to that within the email message itself. So let's save that. All right, so now right now this obviously isn't going to work because we're not actually sending anything, but I'm going to change this because I'm going to make this a post request instead, and I'm going to change this to sign up. So now we've essentially just changed this from a get route to a post route, and I'm going to process some information. Now the thing is that I could go ahead and just take whatever data comes in here and push it right into the send mail. But the problem with that is that if SendGrid is down for some reason, that's not going to work. So what I want to do is, and again, I could emit an event here and then just wait for it and try to reprocess it, but I actually want to save this data. So I'm going to go ahead and import another interface called data. This is serverless data, super easy to use. And I'm going to do const result equals await data.set. And then I want to bring some variables. I want to set a key. So I need to set a key for this. So I'm going to actually just do a template literal here, and I will do user : and then I want to get the email. And then I'm going to save an object with some data associated with this. And I want to get the email and some other data that I'm going to pull out. The easiest way to do this is just to set a const, and we'll destructure some information. So let's destructure the email. Let's assume we'll pass in a first name. Let's assume we'll pass in a last name, and we will go ahead and just destructure this from rec.body. So again, just like Express, this essentially is just pulling email, first name, and last name out of this rec.body object that we will send in when we send a post. So this is something that we would probably want to, sanitize this in real life, but we don't want to add too much code here. Just want to show you exactly how this would work. So now we go ahead and we're destructuring this, and we're sending in this as the user email, but we want to actually capture this information in the object itself here that we're saving. So we should save the email again, all right, because this is just the key, right? If we want the data itself, we want to make sure it's saved in a place we can get it. So we'll put the email in here. We'll call these variables first name and last name as well. And again, this is just the same as doing this. Right, so just an easier way to do that, because we're going to name the value we're using is the variable name is the same as the object name or the key that we're passing in. And then let's put in something like created time or something like that. And we can just use this simple new date. Oops. And then let's go ahead and change this into a ISO 8601 string like this, and save that. Okay, so now when we send in email, first name, last name, we're going to go ahead and write that to serverless data with user with a key of user : email, and then we'll have email, first name, last name, and created time. Okay, and then what we'll do is just for this, we'll change the message to user signed up. And we'll go ahead and send the result of this as well so that we can see it. All right, so now if we wanted to test this, we could use something like Postman, or we could curl it, or we could, use Insomnia or something like that. But actually, built into the Serverless Cloud dashboard is a feature called Interact. Now, what Interact does is it's just like using Postman, and it will actually show you the endpoint. It discovers the endpoint you already have. So here we already have an endpoint called Sign Up, so that shows up here. And then we can go ahead and just populate some information in. So we're going to set up email here, and email will be jeremy@serverless.com. Serverless.com. And we want a first name of Jeremy and a last name of Daily. Okay, so now we have the email, we have the first name, we have the last name. It's post to sign up. We go ahead and click send, and this will go ahead and give us the message that the user signed up. And here's the result: Daily, Jeremy@serverless.com. Here's this created time, and the first name is Jeremy. So pretty easy stuff. All right, so now we can actually go back to this tab here, which is data, and this allows us to actually access all the data that we have saved in serverless data. So if I click get all items, this should bring back this user Jeremy Daily that we created, and I can go in here and I can see the information about it, as well as some information about the date that it was created and so forth, and I can actually change this data and save it if I want to. So this information is saved, but we didn't do anything with it, so I'm going to go ahead and delete this item just to get it out of the way, and we will look at this again in a minute. So go back over to our application, and what I want to do is I want to send this message after the user signs up, but I don't want to do it in real time. I want to do it as an asynchronous event. So what I can do here, which is pretty cool, is I can go ahead and create something called data.on. And this actually creates a listener on the data. So anytime something happens in data, we can create a listener. So I'm just going to do created for now, and then I'm going to do an asynchronous call here, and I'm going to call this called event. And now what we are doing is anytime a new thing is created in the database, we're going to get this created listener that fires. So this handler is going to fire. So let's see exactly what's in that event when that happens. So we'll just do console.log and event like this. All right, so this send mail function isn't going to run. So I'm going to comment this out just so we know that that's not going to do anything here, and I'll save this. All right, so now when a new user signs up, we should not only get record in the database, but we should also have this created event fire, or this created listener fire, and we will get a log of exactly what is an event. So let's go back over to Interact here. So we've got this, we're ready to go. Sign up, post, we hit send. Now this is going to go ahead and create this new user. Now here, we got a message. This is this event that's logged. So this actually happened after the fact, and telling us what exactly happened. So it was created event, and we've got an item and we got a value. This is exactly how it's being saved in serverless data. We are getting the key, which is user : and then the email address, and then all those values in this value field. So if we wanted to go ahead now and send this message, then what we can do is we can call send mail from here. So I'm going to go ahead and do await and send mail like this, and we want to pass in information from this. So what we're going to do is, just to make this easy on us, is we're going to just pass in the value here, so it's relatively simple. So we just have to do event item value. Now this will pass in any information that is sent, this will go ahead and just send this mail message with that. So we already have the template ID built in. We already have the dynamic template data and so forth. So we should be good to go. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save this now. And I'm going to add just something here that says console.log, and we'll say message triggered. And I'm going to change this to get rid of event, and we'll say sign, or we'll say data listener triggered, just so that we can see that information, and save that, and we should be good to go. So let's clear this out, and now let's go back to this here. Now I'm going to jump over into my data tab here. I'm going to load this again, and I'm going to keep using that Jeremy at serverless.com. So I'm going to delete this record again and click delete. And now I'm going to jump back to the interact tab here, and I'm just going to send the same data in. But what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to say my first name is Jeremy Test, and then that way we'll be able to see that something different happened. So I'm going to hit send. This is going to go ahead and return that a user has signed up. This is my information. Over here, I see data listener triggered and message triggered, so that's good to go. And if we jump over into the inbox here, it's going to give us welcome to Serverless Cloud. Hello, Jeremy Test. Thank you for signing up. Okay, so we are partially there, but now we basically have the data that is being saved into our database here. So we have our record of our user account, and then based off of that trigger, we are going and sending a message. So that's great. So maybe this is just the process that you need, and that might work just fine for you, but we want to incorporate events and do a little bit more with event-driven architecture beyond just listening on these data.created things. So rather than sending the mail here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy that out, and we'll just save ourselves some typing later and put that down below. So rather than us actually now responding or trying to send a message at this point, and again, this would retry, and there's some good features that are built in there. But what we actually want to do is we want to delay that message, or we want to make sure that that message is going to be part of an event for us. So instead of trying to do that directly, we're going to bring in a new interface called events, and we'll go ahead and save that. And then in this listener here, for this data listener trigger, instead of us writing the mail message, instead we're going to do a wait, and we'll do events.publish like this. And we're going to publish a new event that essentially is going to tell us that a new user was created. So the way that we'll do that is we'll just name what we want to call this event. So we get to name this anything we want. So let's just call it user.created. And again, we typically name events as if they've already happened, because it always is something that happened in the past. And then we just want to send in some data for this event. So we can send anything we want in here. It's completely up to us. But since we already have information coming in from that event, that's going to, again, remember we use this event.item.value. We already know that the value of this is there. So pretty easy for us to just import that, or just to use that data. So if we did event.item.value here, if we want to actually just use a spread operator, this will just pull all of those values into this level at the this level of this object here. So this is just ES6, I think, is where this was introduced. But anyways, very handy feature, and we're going to use this later because we're going to add some additional values as we do some more work here. So essentially, we've got this, and we published this user.created event. Perfect. Now we're sending this event, and it goes into the system. So right now, we're not listening for this event, which we have to do. So what I want to actually show here is I'm going to do const, and I'll do let's call this result just for the heck of it. And rather than triggering this data listener here, let's go ahead and just log it here, and we will say event triggered, or let's say event published, and we will send in the result of that event. So when this goes ahead and does the publish, this will return it into this value here, and we will go ahead and just log this out so we can see exactly what happened when that was sent. So we can go ahead and do this now, and that should work, but the problem is that we're not listening to it. So the next thing we want to do is we want to create an events.on. And events.on, essentially what that's going to do is it's just going to listen for whatever events we want it to listen to. So in this case, I'm going to change this to user.created, and then I'll do async, and this will be our event. And when this actually gets published, this user.created will get called. And so if I was to do a log here, so .log, and we'll say event triggered, and we will go ahead and log out whatever that event is here. Okay, so now we've got all these things in place. I'm going to go ahead and comment out the send mail again, just because we're not using it yet. And so we've got data.on. This goes ahead and publishes an event, and then we have an event listener that is triggered when that loads. So we will click save. This will sync. We'll go back over to our data and make sure that our record is gone, which it is. Jump over into our interact feature here, and we will go ahead and send this again, and we get a new user signed up. And then if we look over in our logs here, we'll see that event published was this ID with the time and a delay of 0, and then we got this event actually triggered, and it says custom user.created. User.created is the name, and then the body of this is the data that we sent in as part of this item.value here, and then the time and so forth. So now we are getting this information as part of this. So now what we can do is we can re-enable this send here. So we'll uncomment that, and I'm going to copy back my my send mail command, and in here I'm going to go ahead and just send the mail, and I don't need to do event.item.value now because basically it's coming in as event.body. So I'm going to go ahead and just take the event.body here, and we don't need to send all this in, so I'm just going to say event triggered, and I'll do event.body.email just so that we can see that was done. And we will click save here, and this is saved. So now, if all of this works as it should, I'll clear this out and go back to data here and delete my user that was created. Delete and delete, and then go back to interact, and we're going to fire off a new user here, and we should have an empty inbox. So interact here, send, we created a new user, this is created, event published, event triggered, and message trigger. So we now have run these three things. They happen pretty much instantaneously. And over in our inbox, we now have welcome to Serverless Cloud with Jeremy Test, and thank you for signing up for Serverless Cloud. Okay, so we are almost there, but what we want to do now though is actually add some delays and add multiple emails into the system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into SendGrid here, and we're going to take this welcome email and we're going to duplicate this, and we're going to call this follow-up number 1, and click duplicate, and then we'll go into follow-up number 1, and we will edit this version, and we'll just call this follow-up number 1, and we'll say something like or how about, how are you enjoying serverless cloud ? And we can say just checking in on your serverless cloud account. I don't know. And then over here, we're going to say, we hope you are enjoying serverless cloud. Let us know if there is anything we can help with. All right, not the best marketing, but that's not the point of this. All right, so we now have this, and we're going to go ahead and click Save. And now we have a new email that says, how are you enjoying serverless cloud? And we could go ahead and, again, we can preview this if we want to. We get the test data filling out there. But we want to actually make another one. So we'll duplicate this, and this is not copy, instead follow-up number 2. Hit duplicate. Come in here, edit this. We'll call this follow-up number 2. And then is there anything we can help with? I don't know. And then again, I'll leave this just checking in. And then over here, we can say something like, you've been using serverless cloud for a while now. Let us know how your experience has been. I don't know. You probably want to write better copy than I just did. So we'll click Save, and now we have 2 more emails. So what we want to do is we want to send these emails in sequence, and we want to send one after the other with some sort of delay in between those. So if we go back over to our application here, let's go ahead and create a new variable. We'll call it templates, and we'll just have an array. And we're just going to store our template values in an array. So we already are using this template value here when we send our welcome email. So we'll just put this in here and call it welcome. And then we have this one that is our follow-up. So here, follow-up number 1, and then we'll do one more here that we are going to call follow-up number 2. So here, and follow-up number 2. Okay, so now we have all of our templates here, and we can go ahead and use these. Now, what we want to make sure we do is within this send mail itself, we want this template to be dynamic. So we're going to go ahead and just change this to data.template underscore ID. And then that way we have to make sure that when we call this send mail, we have to make sure that we have the data that we need. And again, if we go back here, this is just calling event.body, and event.body is whatever we're pushing in here. So what we're going to do is we want to include that template ID here. So we're going to do template ID, and then we're going to just use templates and template 0 for the first item in the array, and that'll be the welcome email here. Okay, so now this will work the exact same way, or it certainly should work the exact same way, but what we want to do is we want to send multiple emails, and we want to send them in that sequence as we mentioned. So on this user-created event, this is something that probably would only happen once, so our naming convention here might not be great, but that's not that big of a deal, because what we essentially want to happen is we want this to get triggered. And so what we want to do now is to distinguish between these is we actually want to look at the template here, and then that gets passed in to the send mail, which will be our event.body, and then that'll be data. We'll have data.email, we'll have our template ID, and we'll have our data as well. So we're kind of jamming a whole bunch of things into just this data variable. You could split this out if you wanted to, and have, you know, maybe metadata and actual data or whatever, but this will work just fine because you can send in extra dynamic template data and it doesn't really matter. But what we do want to do is trigger this multiple times. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this again. And this is, again, sending an event, user created, so forth. Like we said, the semantics might not be perfect here, but this is going to be our welcome email. And then what we want to do is actually schedule follow-up emails as well. So I'm going to use template 1 for the second one. And rather than just publishing it right when it's supposed to publish, I'm going to add in another thing here that says after. So I'm going to specify just 10 seconds, and you can use a date, an actual date here. You can use epoch time if you want to. There's a number of different ways that you can specify when you want this to send, but having a relative time is very cool because obviously you don't want to send a specific time, or you don't even have to do the calculation. Just say after 10 seconds or after 3 days or whatever it is that you might send that. So this will delay this message for 10 seconds and send in template number 1. And I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these results here because don't need those. Like that. And then I'll use this as follow-up number 1, and we'll send this after 10 seconds, and then we'll do follow-up number 2 and use the second or the third template in there, and we're going to actually send this after 20 seconds. And so what we have now, and of course this won't work, so we'll just do events published. How about that? Okay, so now what should happen is our whole sequence should work the exact same way, but now we'll send the welcome email, we'll delay a follow-up number 1, and we'll delay a follow-up number 2. Now, these might be multiple days, however you want to do it, but every single one of these is going to emit a user.created event, which means that this user.created listener is going to trigger every time that happens, and then we'll get this message trigger. So I can do maybe add in a little bit of extra context here so that we can see it, and we'll just go ahead and see the email. Maybe we'll send the template ID to see what template it sends. Again, we're already logging that up here, but again, this is just for testing purposes. Oh, we called template instead of template_ID. So we can jump through this one more time if we want to. We'll see that this is here. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this and then go back to our demo, and I'm going to change, or to interact, I'm going to change this to Jeremy and click send. We created a new user. Now we got our events are published, and we should see that we have an event trigger. And if we watch our inbox over here, we've got welcome to Serverless Cloud. Then 10 seconds later or so, we have our message triggered for the next one, which should pop open a new message over here. And then finally, our last message is triggered, and then over here we should see that new one come in as well. And I could probably hit refresh. Refresh, there it is. Okay, so we've got welcome to Serverless Cloud, and then we have how are you enjoying it, and is there anything I can help with? So we got all 3 messages delayed for us, and we could change that however we wanted to. So there are a whole bunch of things that you could do to enhance this application. One of the things that we can do is whenever this whenever this events.on triggers, if there is an error when this tries to run, then it'll actually just keep retrying itself over and over and over again for up to 14 days. So you want to make sure that we build in a little bit of error catching in here and decide basically how we want to handle this. So we can just go ahead and do simple catch, try catch statement in here. And if this was to fail, we can throw message failed or something like that. We could of course log this. We could trigger some sort of alarm that we wanted to listen to. But the idea behind this is that if this throws an error, then it's going to retry. So what we might want to do is look at what the actual error is and decide whether or not we want to fail on that or not. Whether we want it to retry. Maybe SendGrid is down, for example, and we want to retry that message and send that over time. Now the other cool thing that we could do here as well is because we are saving information into the database, we could check this. We could update the database with something that the user did, and then when this event is actually triggered, decide whether or not we actually want to send that message or not. So you could do it that way. The other thing you could do is when this particular user.created fired, you could go ahead and say, okay, if it was this particular sequence, then I want to emit another event then, and schedule an email for the future, for example. So there's a whole bunch of cool things that you could do, but essentially it gives you a lot of control. And it's super easy to do, and it happened in no time. So now we've got this whole thing set up. If we actually wanted to publish this to production and let other people use it, then we can go ahead and just do deploy, and we'll deploy it to, we'll just call it prod. So this will go ahead and create a new stage in our application, and I'll jump over here into our overview, go back to the mail demo app. So this is actually deploying a new stage. You'll see prod pops up here as a stage, and it took 13 seconds, so pretty fast. And now we immediately have a new version of our app. So there's no default endpoint here, but if we jump back into Interact, for example, we can copy this, and we'll go to our, let's go back to here. Oops, let's go back to here. We'll go into prod, and now we can actually interact with prod as well. So if we want to go ahead and do this sign up and create a post here, we can paste this in, and now we will sign up again, and I'll call it Jeremy Prod, and we'll click send, and we'll get that this was created here. Now we won't see the logs here, because this is our development environment. This is our developer sandbox. But we should get our email. So we got our first one here, and this will say, hello, Jeremy Prod. And the other one should come in just a few seconds. But while we're waiting for that, we can jump back in here, and what we can actually see are logs. So if we click into logs, all those logs that we saw over here in our terminal, because this is our production environment, we actually want to look at these logs in that environment there. So we'll see that it was triggered and all the information being loaded there. So we'll see some of those logs and all that information there. And then if we go back into our inbox here, we now see our hello, Jeremy Prod. We hope you had a good experience, whatever that says. And hello, Jeremy Prod. Is there anything we can help you with? So that is Serverless Cloud using Serverless Cloud events and SendGrid. Whole bunch more that you can do with this, but just thought it would be kind of cool to build this app. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, jeremy@serverless.com. Hit me up on Twitter @jeremy_daily. And I look forward to hearing your feedback on Serverless Cloud.